Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Serious. Encounters with strange entities or unexplained phenomena. Share any weird stories you have.
My grandparents lived in an old house. It was cabin style in the middle of nowhere, so the second floor was a loft-type situation, and everything was wooden and rustic. I used to hate staying there when I was a kid, because I'd have to sleep on the second floor while their room was on the first floor, and I was a real anxious child. My grandmother was sick for my whole life. At the time I was 9. She had cancer, but that's not how she died. She died by falling down the stairs. It was weird, because the only thing on the second floor was a game room and a bed for us kids. Nobody in the family knew exactly how it happened, why she was up there, etc. But obviously, I was now completely terrified of the stairs and lodge, instead of just not liking it like I did before she died. My grandfather made plans to sell the house, and me and my mom went up there to help him pack. So we spent all Friday evening packing. That night my mom and I stayed in the lodge. She kept flopping her arms and sleeping, slapping me throughout the night. I asked her why the next morning. She said she kept hearing me calling for her and wanted me to stop. Saturday was more of the same during the day. That night my mom fell asleep downstairs on the couch. I was sleeping when I heard someone coming up the steps. I sat up in the bed just in time to see my mom fall backwards down the stairs. She was okay but very afraid. She said that she felt 2 hands on her shoulders that violently shoved her backwards down the stairs. She got up to check on me because she could hear me calling her. The thing is, I wasn't calling her. I was dead asleep. That was the last night we spent in that house, and to this day, I still think about how my grandma died. Did she hear me calling her? Did she respond? Did she fall for the same trick my mom did? Either way, that house is pure evil. Glad it's out of our family.
Pick related. Been there a couple times since I live about a mile away. Very weird place. Used to be a native burial ground. Used as a burial ground for excommunicated people. Murderers, Christians, etc. People dying on the property after the official cemetery opened. Used as a dumping ground for bodies by Al Capone's gang. People doing weird cult rituals up until the 1970s. Didn't think much of it until I visited it back a few years ago, especially the second time. Be me. Be dumb 19-year-old. Friends invite me to a haunted cemetery. Hell yeah, sounds cool. Head there near sundown. The cemetery is deep in the woods of the forest preserve. Have to hide from the cops after sundown. Literally lay behind a rotten tree trunk until cops with flashlights pass by. Pretty dope. What are we doing here again? Anon, we're gonna try and summon something with Ouija, haha, come on. Seems stupid, but why not? Less than 10 minutes after cops leave, thick fog covering the grass around headstones. The temperature drops dramatically. Dumb friends pull out Ouija, and we start a session on top of a large headstone. A few minutes in, a Ouija board not doing much, about to wrap up. Little glass jitters off the board and shoots a foot away into a bush. WTF, which one of you did that? Anon, we didn't do shit. Feel weird. That feel when the pressure drops right before a big storm. Pressure on my chest. Actually feel like wind knocked out of me. WTF. Fall down, can hardly breathe. I don't have asthma, WTF. Suddenly fine. Get up and immediately dash out towards the car. Friends follow quickly. Don't stop until I'm in the car. My back hurts badly. My skin burns. Take off shirt. Actual burn marks on back. Haven't been back since. My parents thought it was just bad poison ivy, but this was in the middle of fall, and I had a long sleeve shirt and coat on the whole time.
Something happened to me when I was about 5 years old. I was staying with my grandparents while my mother went to night school. Laying in my bed, which would eventually become my grandmother's bed, and looking into a mirror that was hanging on the closet door, I remember seeing a blue flash out of the corner of my eye from the living room area, and then I saw it. A humanoid figure that kind of glided or teleported toward my bedroom in a zigzagging manner. Once it reached my bedroom door, it stood to the side, looked in, and made a motion with its finger for me to follow it. All I remember is pure fear, panic, and throwing the bed covers over my head, then darkness. I don't know what happened. 20 years later, I found myself back in that same bedroom. My grandmother had died, and I was there staying with my grandfather just to be with him, love him, and take care of him in any way I could. While staying with my grandfather 2 nights in a row, I experienced something profound. I would wake up around 2 or 4 a.m., keenly aware of a presence in the room, which grew into a buzzing or vibrating ocean of yellow light all around me. I was concerned that I was being abducted by the blue humanoid again, but it wasn't the same thing, and I don't recall being truly afraid. It was a happy, positive, buzzing energy, and it tickled my side. This happened twice, and I still don't understand. I'm still processing, I guess.
Happened to my brother. Bro is out for a late-night walk. Circa 3 a.m., he is passing our town's church. Suddenly, he hears a voice that sounds like it's speaking without a sound. Said it was more like a force inside his head that he recognized as speech. He glances to where he feels it's coming from. In front of the church is a woman in black dress with a black cap on her head. The lower body looks normal, but the upper body is like 2 identical women superimposed over one another. They're spazzing around, phasing in and out of each other while standing in place. He feels like they're telling him to come closer. He looks straight forward and keeps walking, ignoring them. As he leaves the area, the voice fades and nothing else weird happens. A few days later, he told me he had a really weird dream. The dream begins by him popping into it, like it was already there before. He is aware that he is in a dream, weird since he's not a regular lucid dreamer. He is in a room with bland walls, a projector, and a lot of chairs. He is sitting in a chair in the front row. Chairs are lined up in rows. He looks around and our extended family is sitting in the chairs, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. They're all staring blankly at the wall in front of them. The projector is one of those 4-wheeled ones where you put a slide or something on top of it. The projector is empty, just projecting a blank image onto the wall. There's a female figure standing next to the projector. Brother said she was dressed in black and looked like a human mixed with an anglerfish. Had the light dangling from her forehead and a huge, ugly mouth like the anglerfish. They make eye contact. She is staring right at him, and he could feel she was aware of his presence. He could feel that she made him appear there, and that everyone in here was under her control. He got the feeling that here was not just this room, but some other dimension or space different from ours. Brother smiles at her, like a super big cartoonish smile. He then projectile vomits all over the fish lady, and she cowers underneath the stream. Immediately after, he wakes up in a pool of sweat. Hasn't seen any creepy ladies in black since then. My brother is a misanthropic, stubborn asshole who hates attention. I don't believe he would make this up.
I haven't shared this story with anyone since it happened, but my sister was also there. So maybe I'll ask her about it sometime. This is the only real spooky thing I've experienced. It's only small, but it stuck with me. Anyway, here goes. Be me, 9 years old about 11 years ago. Watched my dad pass away from a heart attack earlier in the year. It's probably about 9 or 10 at night, sitting in living room with sister, 10 years older than me. I just finished watching a movie, turn off TV. Talking to each other when we hear a strained, raspy breath coming from the open window right next to us, from the backyard. We stop talking, waiting to hear it again. Another long exhale. We both scream and run to our mom's room and tell her what we heard. Hear it one more time as we are coming back into the living room with Mom, too dark to see anything out the window. She tells us it's a gecko or something. They can hiss if you scare them. I walk over to the sliding door that opens to the backyard and yell out, I can't remember exactly what, trying to scare whatever's out there. We calmed down, and before going to bed, we all agreed it was just a gecko. It was easier to think that, but I thought about that raspy breathing for a while after that night. I realized it reminded me of my dad's ragged breath, from the night I came out into the living room as Mum was trying to resuscitate him while the ambulance came. I didn't even remember till a few years later that Dad's ashes were buried not far from that window. That's it. Might not be very scary to you, but it freaked the shit out my sister and I. I don't believe in ghosts, but I still wonder what it was that came to our window sometimes, mostly when I wake up in the middle of the night.
I once saw an alien during a dream vision. Not all dreams are significant, but every once in a blue moon I will experience a dream that goes beyond the typical limits. These are dreams where the meaning is clear, inspired, or in other words, more than just a mere dream. I call them dream visions. This vision began as a normal dream. I was inside a house that was settled in a valley. Suddenly the dream is interrupted and I gain lucidity. A heavy fog appears and a large alien craft descends. It was like a fat saucer. It lands in the yard directly opposite the front door. The ship opens up and little grays, although they were kind of greenish, come walking out. I say grays as in plural, but it was more like a single entity that was fourth dimensional. I was seeing the gray's temporal parts. That is the space-time worm. Look it up if you are unfamiliar with the term. There was another entity as well, a tall gray, the one whose face is now seared in my mind. However, at this point he was still nondescript. The tall gray did not come from inside the ship like the little grays. He just appeared there, already outside once the ship had landed. My dream self was watching this through the window, nearly blinded by the light shining through. Panic increases, but remember my training. Throw up a psychic shield and focus my intent to let them know I don't want contact. The little grays keep coming, but I don't let them in. The tall gray directs a kind of beam towards me. It travels through the door and I become paralyzed, not just in the dream but in reality as well. They're pushing their way in, and I abort. Suddenly my surroundings are gone, and my perspective becomes first person where previously this had all been in the third. I'm now being sucked through the vortex. I'm sure some of you are familiar with them. Flying like a bat out of hell, desperate to get back to my body. While I'm traveling through the vortex, the tall gray intercepts me. The vortex begins to destabilize and my vision starts flickering and flashing. The alien's face passes through the walls of the vortex and emerges into my field of view. It was a gray mantis, the most vile and malicious face I've ever seen. It was horrible, terrifying. Pray that you never come face to face with one. I cry out at the top of my lungs, "Oh God, help me," slam back into my body with my then girlfriend, married now, gripping my arm and shaking me. In the seconds immediately following my return to reality, I see a shadow man standing at the foot of the bed. He dissolves away into the air. I have often experienced sleep paralysis, but this was unlike any other time. My wife wakes me up when I start to yell, or rather, when it happens, I think I'm screaming, but it's usually just a whimper that gets louder gradually, and never has I actually used words. This time there was no gradual increase in volume. I straight up yelled the words. This was also the only time I've actually seen a shadow person after an attack. The only other time I've seen a shadow person was when I tripped on Benadryl. I told that story about a week ago in another thread on /x/. Maybe you remember it. Was it truly just a dream? Will you write me off and say it was just sleep paralysis? I don't know what to think myself. It wasn't a normal dream. It wasn't just another case of sleep paralysis. I know what sleep paralysis feels like, and this was not the same.
I have a story. My brother and his wife own a small business, and they sometimes have to drive out and meet with clients at random points in the day. Well, they got a call one afternoon, and my brother asked me to watch my 1-year-old niece, Emily. Emily and I spent the afternoon together. Night falls. I put Emily in a crib that I keep for her in the living room. My brother calls and apologizes for the delay, says they're about to head back. I start making cookies to kill some time. Living room is dark, so Emily can sleep. I got the oven light on in the kitchen so I can see what I'm doing. Basically, it's low lighting. Almost done with cookies when I hear Emily babbling in her sleep. I turned around to check on her. See a dark shape standing over her coal crib. What.png? It's bending over real low as if trying to get a good look inside. Fight or flight kicks in. Nobody messes with my niece. I rush towards the crib, and I see the shape stand up straight. It's as tall as the ceiling. Looks like black smoke. I'm holding a whisk, and the only thing I can think is to throw it at the shape. I don't know why I was scared. Just as the whisk touches the shape, it dissipates, and I heard a human voice cry out. Whisk slams into the wall. Emily wakes up and starts crying. Brother shows up and can't get her back to sleep. I ruined his night. If a wraith you happen to see, whisk it once and you'll be free.
I moved around a lot and have a lot of experiences with things that were never human. I actually cannot see human ghosts at all except for once in my life. But after learning demons can disguise themselves, I don't know if I've ever seen a human ghost. My sister can see human ghosts and saw a red-eyed shadow man once. My dad as a kid saw shadow men. My brother-in-law can see ghosts that are like recordings of past events running on loop. I keep joking I'm going to write a book based on the three of us and my wife who has never seen anything, so she would be the token normie. Be me at 20, not you. I have always been able to see ghosts with my mind's eye but didn't trust it was real. At one house, a neighbor saw an old man who died in the home and told me how he is friendly. Never saw him. In that home with the old man, I saw a shadow thing that crawled on all fours and stalked me. Every night I get up to pee, see in mind's eye through the wall to something standing at halfway point on staircase, crouched pitch black on all fours, no face, gangly human limbs, front arms too long. Open the door to walk down the hallway. It jerkily moves one leg at a time up slowly. Make it to the bathroom and shut the door when it is close to the top of the stairs. Never look at it. Tell self it is not real. Shut the door. It freezes, one leg hanging in the air. See it in my mind's eye, calmly waiting. Forgot to mention the top of the stairs is right across from the bathroom door. It's a crossroad of top of stairs, bathroom door. Long hallway with my door and brother's door across from me. Take a deep breath and open the door. It moves. Same slow, methodical pace. Walk to the bedroom door. Close the bedroom door right when its head crosses the steps. Pretty sure it was looking at me as I closed the door even though it had no face. Repeat every night for a year until I moved out. Realized years later, my younger brother, who is special needs but high functioning, never once left his room in the middle of the night after we all went to bed. Be me another time in the house. Lose something in the bedroom. Sense eyes on me from the closet. Get angry and start cursing up a storm. Say out loud if something took it, they better give it back. The door to the bedroom is open and my brother walking by looks at me wide-eyed. I realized I cursed louder than ever before and said that in a very gravely tone of voice and accent, like a gruff old man's voice. Pretty sure the old dude tried to possess me or temporarily did in that moment. Be me in the same house. Move the bedroom to a room in the basement. I always feel watched in the basement, but especially in that room in the back corner where a chair is against a wall. Always feel glared at from that corner like someone doesn't like me in there. Pretty sure it was a shadow man, since in my mind's eye I saw a faceless black tall figure with a wide hat, always standing by the chair like it was their possession. Mom locked our Wiener dog locked in the basement room once when we had to leave for a few hours, and she didn't want him to poop on the carpet upstairs since we were renting it. The backyard wasn't fenced off, so we couldn't just let him stay outside while we were gone. Come back home and open the basement door. Mom gasps. Dumb dog tore a hole in the wall that separated the room from the rest of the basement just to get out. Just sat there wagging his tail like he was fine being in the rest of the basement. Mom was upset, but I didn't blame the dog at all.
My brother is also special needs, and you just reminded me of a time at my grandmother's old house. Be me. It's 2009, so naturally staying up late on /co/or/x/ is a nightly routine. Share a room and bed LOL with autistic brother. He never minds the light or noise of the desktop CPU, always sleeps quietly and generally never gets up to pee. One night, he gets up to go. Whatever, barely even notice. That is, until I hear him come out of the bathroom, stop abruptly as if looking out into the dark living room, and then hear him bolt down the hall and into our bed. He jumps straight into the blankets and covers his head with them. Get a little spooked, 'cause my brother also had a habit that involved staying in the bottom half of the house talking to people that weren't there for hours. Sometimes we'd have to go looking for him. He'd be down there that long. That entire half of the house was empty. The only time I ever saw him scared over anything in that house, and it honestly freaked me out because I always saw my brother's presence as a protection from the other side. They're unironically special. Your story was terrifying. The shit that lurks around the earth at night is fucked.
Not particularly spooky, no ghosts or UFOs or weird entities or whatever. But I do have an unexplained phenomenon story. Be me, 17 at the time. Have a really vivid, weird dream one night. My family and I were driving home from what felt like a fairly lengthy car ride. Pull up to a house I recognized and park in the garage. Usually, I just park in the driveway, so it was kind of weird. Mom stops us before we get out. "Before you guys get out, I have some bad news. The dog died while you were gone last night." Paraphrasing, but that's the gist of it. Go in the house, and I'll wake up about a year or so later. Visiting grandparents for Christmas. My cousins live about an hour from my grandparents, so we visit with them a lot over the holidays. Spend the night at my cousin's place. Parents and grandparents pick us up in the morning. Start the long drive back to my grandparents' house. Finally pull into my grandparents' driveway. Feeling a weird sense of dread now. Dad doesn't walk well, and grandparents' driveway is on a steep hill, so we pull into the garage. Before we go inside, Mom stops us. "I have some bad news." This obviously does nothing to quell that dread. "The dog died while you were gone last night." Again, paraphrasing, go inside with the most bizarre mix of sadness and deja vu I've ever felt. Maybe a little mundane for /X/, but for the life of me I can't think up a reasonable explanation for how accurate this dream was. I've only ever had maybe one other dream where I got a similar feeling, but I may be able to explain that one.
Not really an entity, but my uncle died years ago. He was a painter and an amazing one, but he never really had any great success. He was originally from the country, and his early stuff, when I was a kid and into my teens, were basically landscape scenes from the Midwest. They were beautiful, but there was one I remember seeing when I turned 13. It was an Asian street vendor at an outdoor market. The scene was very detailed. There's a crowd of people. In the center is a street vendor. You can see his face clearly, focused and busy, almost angry, as he, I think, shouts something to a customer to his right, my favorite of his works. 10 years go by and I ask my uncle about this specific painting. He seems puzzled. He produces from another room, and it's exactly as I remember it. Asian vendor in a crowd so detailed you can see beads of sweat on his stern face as he shouts something, face slightly turned to his right. Yes, that's the one. He tells me he didn't paint that until a couple of years ago when he visited China. There's no way I could have seen it when I was a kid. Impossible.jpg. A few months later, Uncle dies suddenly of a heart attack. My father and my other uncle split his paintings between themselves. Dad gets the Chinese street vendor. I went to look at it. Get goosebumps. The painting has changed. There's still a crowd. The street vendor is still in the center, but he's different. His face is completely emotionless, and he's staring emptily out at the viewer. Made my skin crawl. I eventually had to get rid of it because I couldn't stop myself from going back and looking at it. Each time I did, the guy's face just creeped me out even more.
Didn't see this firsthand, but it's a story I heard while down in Mexico City. My friend is a DJ. He books a show in Mexico City and he wants me to come. I hate that sort of music, but it's a free trip and I like this guy. We're staying with this girl named Viridiana. She's a college girl studying chemistry, I think. Our first night there, we're having a couple of beers before hitting the hay. I frequent /X/, so naturally I start asking about spooky local stories. Viridiana's eyes go wide and she tells me this story. Her dad had a large guava tree on their property when she was growing up. It bore huge guavas in the summer, often too many to eat, and they'd spend a lot of time out there picking them all. One night, Viridiana decides to go check on the tree, alone. She walks up to the tree, freezes. In the dark, she can see a large, slim man picking guavas off the top of the tree. So tall, he's actually bent over it. Viridiana said he looked like a thin, tall skeleton, only he was all black. The man noticed her, but she was too terrified to move. She heard strange clicking sounds that seemed to come from the man. He pulled a guava off the tree, almost dramatically, like he was exaggerating his movements. Then he tossed the guava at her. She jumped and ran inside, screaming. She told her dad what she'd seen, and he grabbed his machete. He walked outside with Viridiana begging him not to go. She thought her dad was going to die. She was so scared, but she couldn't bear to let him go out there alone, so she followed him. The tall man was gone. In the dark, Viridiana could see the shape of the guava that the man had thrown at her lying on the ground. Her dad bent to pick it up and jumped back with a shout. It wasn't a guava, it was a bloody heart. Viridiana seemed so terrified recounting this story that, as skeptical as I was, I still got the chills.
This happened when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Me, sat in the school classroom in the middle of the day with about 30 other classmates. Building had tall ceilings and nearly floor-ceiling windows. I'm sat with my back to the window working. It's covered in net curtains. It was dazzling to look at these windows on a sunny day. Suddenly I hear all the sound in the room slow down. It sounds exactly like when you slow a tape down. My vision is like looking through water. I can see my own hands clearly, as always, but looking at the room and the people next to me is like looking underwater. I feel a presence behind me. When I turn, I move in slow motion. There's a white figure. I can only see his clothes. There's nothing where his face or hands should be. It's an old-style suit. He feels neutral and non-threatening. He isn't proportioned as if he was really in the room. More like he's a figure superimposed on my vision. He's walking towards me, getting closer and closer, without ever seeming to pass through the window, until he passes through me. I feel it, but I can't describe the feeling. It felt neutral. I turn around, expecting to see him come out of the other side. He doesn't. A second passes where I still can't hear or see anything. I notice, and my perceptions immediately begin to return to normal. It sounded like a tape being sped back up. In less than a second, I can see and hear normally again. Friend asks me, WTF I was looking at. Apparently, I was looking behind me, mesmerized at nothing.
WTF, a classmate, and I had a similar experience when we were out one night. In university, there's an art exhibit featuring student work. Classmate and I go. We make our way through the exhibit and finish around 9 p.m. Parking is on the other side of the building, so we're going through this little colonnade that leads towards the parking lot. A strong wind blows through the colonnade. The two of us are talking and laughing when suddenly my friend's laughter begins to slow down exactly like you described it. Like a tape being slowed down. My own voice does the same. Even the sound of the wind slows down until it's a deep hum deep. Then we feel this brightness behind us. I mean, we see it too, but we really feel it, like a warm, buzzing sensation. We look at each other in slow motion, but neither one of us looks back. I remember my friend's hair blowing really slowly in the wind. Buzzing intensifies. Then the sound speeds back up. I watch the movement of his hair speed up too. Brightness is gone, and everything is back to normal. We rush out into the parking lot and get the hell out of there.
Me buy my first big boy centerfire rifle. AK, of course. Want the classic wooden furniture look of Soviet AKs. Find a surplus set of parts online. Serbian war surplus will show signs of use. Oily, greasy Slavic package arrives 3 weeks later. Parts are most definitely used. Tons of chips and scratches. These came off the real deal. On one side of the front handguard, a Slavic woman's name was scratched on. On the other, a Slavic man's name scratched in with deep weathered cuts. Next to that, another slave name, cut lighter and in a different hand. AKA someone most definitely got killed in war while holding these same handguards. They felt normal to me for the first few minutes, but my Colombian co-worker, older guy in his 60s, naturalized in the US for 20 years, got spooked by the parts even before I told him their origin. I dropped one into his hand and his arm buckled under the strain, like I'd dropped a 10 pounds weight instead of a 1 pound piece of wood. He said it had bad energy and told me to throw it away. I'm not sure if it's related or not, but it's been about a year, and in that year I've started getting really bad vibes from the closet I keep them in. It turns out they don't fit my rifle, so I've just kept them. Multiple times a week I snap awake from sleep with the impression that someone is watching me from that closet and has just retreated out of view into the darkness. Most of the time it's just a generic presence, but one time I vividly remember seeing a little white girl, 6 or 8 years old, wearing a nightgown standing in the doorway of the closet. That was the night I racked my shotgun so hard my neighbors heard it through the wall. Blog post ending. After typing this out, I think I'm going to get rid of these parts just in case. I'm a skeptic, but not so much that I ignore possibilities. I was thinking about burying these in a remote patch of forest. Any suggestions? I was thinking some more. I realized that I've been having war nightmares this last year, like I've never had before. I've always been a vivid dreamer and have practiced lucid dreaming in the past. I tend to have a good recall of my dreams and their recurring themes. Previously, as a young teen, I had dreamed of war once. It was a lot of running and dust and noise, but no fear. In the last year, though, I've had at least 2 very vivid, very disconcerting dreams about war that were extremely different from my first. Dream starts. I'm lying in a crater of cold mud on top of a barren hill in fog. I can tell other guys from my unit are dotted around the hill in similar spots. Feel a rush of oncoming dread. I'm talking all-encompassing animal fear. Here sense an artillery round hit the hill so close I feel it with my entire body, a wave of energy filling my nerves and ears and mind. Scream in abject terror as I hug the ground. Repeat over and over for what feels like forever, until I woke up. I teared up a bit writing and recalling that I've never felt such strong emotion in a dream without waking up before that. The other dream is similar. Dream starts in a light forest, bare trees, dead leaves on the ground, fog in the air. I'm in a slight natural ditch, no one else is around. I wander and stumble through the foggy woods and come across a wounded man. Don't remember exactly what he said or what he looks like, but I get the sense the rest of my unit is killed or wounded and spread out through the woods and we're being hunted. Spend the rest of the dream fearfully wandering without finding anything. So yeah, if that other anon doesn't come through with a shipping address, I'm most definitely burning these parts.
So my story is partly about 2 boys I knew growing up. One was named Jeremiah and the other I think was named Vernon, but for some reason we all called him Holt. Don't ask me why. Keep in mind this is a short version. I'm leaving out a lot of details here to avoid turning this into a novella. Growing up, my house sat right next to a cemetery. On the other side of it lived Jeremiah. He was 2 years older than me and a preacher's kid. His family wasn't really strict, but their particular brand of Christianity stressed the idea of turning the other cheek. They were opposed to all forms of violence. Jeremiah wasn't even allowed to put up a fight in self-defense. As for Holt, he was my age but much bigger than me and mean. I caught a nasty beating from him when I was 11. By the time he was through with me, my face was cherry cobbler. Since Jeremiah wasn't allowed to fight, Holt often used him as a punching bag. I still remember seeing it happen the first time. Jeremiah was older, taller, and no weakling by any means, but down he went and Holt wailed on him mercilessly for a long while. It was a couple of years after Holt had beaten me up like that. The scene brought the memory rushing back. I felt like I was watching a flashback, only from the outside. I wanted to help, but my feet may as well have been stone. Knowing I was too much of a coward to do anything still bothers me, to tell you the truth. A couple years later, Jeremiah's folks die in a freak accident. He ends up living alone, working odd jobs around town to support himself. My dad feels sorry for him, gives him some work to do around our house, just simple repairs. Turns out Jeremiah's pretty handy. Some quick background here before I continue. There was a house down the road from me where some of the old men in town used to hang out and drink all day. Holt starts visiting this house. He picks up drinking, just beers at first, but pretty soon he's downing alcohol like it's water. Bad news bears. Holt becomes more violent, gives Jeremiah a severe beating one day while drunk. My dad says if it happens again, he's going to teach the little bastard a lesson. I don't care if he's just a kid. Dad used to box, so this is a pretty serious threat. But not long after this beating, Jeremiah becomes a bit of a recluse. Then I noticed him spending a lot of time at the cemetery. He always shows up after dark, and he'll sometimes be there when I'm going to bed. I could see the cemetery from my bedroom window. Some days I wake up and he'll still be there in the morning. One day, I'm outside after dark and I see him heading into the cemetery as usual. I decided to follow him. By the time I catch up to him, he's kneeling by his parents' graves whispering, "Jeremiah?" I say. He turns around quickly and I see him wiping tears from his eyes. I'll keep this part brief because there's just so much to say. The two of us end up talking for a long while, and Jeremiah eventually tells me that his parents have been appearing for the last month, every day. They're usually there in the morning looking sad. They tell him that they can't cross over to the other side because Jeremiah's pain is keeping them anchored here. I was always kind of skeptical of these stories, but Jeremiah seems sincere. Truth be told, he seems scared. His parents have been talking to him about Holt. They say he's possessed by something, that he's going to cause a lot more pain and ruin many lives unless someone intervenes. When Jeremiah's parents first began appearing, they looked sad but otherwise normal. But with each day they've been looking more listless. Their bodies have begun to bend like they have a huge weight on their backs. If he doesn't do something soon, they say, they're going to wither away before they're able to cross over to the other side. As he's telling me this, Jeremiah's hands are clasped together tightly, shaking like he's angry. He says he doesn't know if this is God testing him. He says it feels cruel. He wonders if maybe his parents are the devil in disguise. Before I can even soak all this in, he stands up and marches out the cemetery gate. I watch him walk up the road to his house and disappear in the darkness. Fast forward a few days. It's early afternoon. I'm hanging out by the cemetery when I see Jeremiah coming down the road towards me. He walks by and his eyes meet mine. He nods and waves like always, but then he says, "Hi there, Anon. Keep your distance." Then he keeps right on walking. I wonder what he meant by that, and I watch him as he walks down the road. All of a sudden, there's Holt, staggering out of the house where the old men drink. He's Otis drunk, as my grandfather would say. Holt falls over right into the middle of the road as Jeremiah approaches. I hear Holt's ugly voice slurring his words. "What the hell are you looking at?" I feel a tug in my heart, and I think, I can't watch Jeremiah catch another beating. Without thinking, I begin to hurry over. Then I see a flash of something in Jeremiah's right hand. There's a loud pop, and a splatter of red all along the dirt road, and Holt falls backward onto the ground. The old men come stumbling outside. They see what Jeremiah has done, but Jeremiah didn't even pause. He's already turned around, heading back towards his house. He passes me. Our eyes meet again, but he doesn't say a word. This next part is going to sound messed up and hard to believe, but it's hand to the Bible true. Nobody cared. I ran home to tell my dad what had happened, and he didn't seem the least bit concerned about Holt. If anything, he was more worried that Holt's family might try and hurt Jeremiah. Still, someone had to tell them, so my dad figured he'd do it. He was gone for a very long time. When he returned, he seemed distraught. Something really bothered my dad about that visit. He's hinted at it before, but he never said what it was. The only definitive thing he ever told me was that they seemed relieved when I told them. Then the old men, the drunks, buried Holt's body out behind the house where they always hung out. I don't know if they felt responsible, or if they were pressured by the neighbors, but Holt's buried back there now. As far as I know, no police were involved. Fast forward, years later, Jeremiah's become more normal, less reclusive. He was at our house replacing some windows one time. It was just me and him. We talked for a bit, and I brought up the time we spoke at the cemetery. I asked what happened with his parents. Did they cross over? He paused and wouldn't look at me, but he said, "I don't know. They didn't come back, so I guess that means they're okay." I felt extremely awkward. I just said, "That's good," and turned to walk away. But Jeremiah stopped me. His hands were resting on the windowsill, shaking. He still wasn't looking at me. Do you think I did the right thing? Imagine that question. I had no clue what to say. I just told him what my grandpa used to tell me when things were bad. "We try our best, Jeremiah. The rest is in God's hands." That's it. That was the first time that those old stories hit home for me. Sorry for the length.
I'm not a very good storyteller, but here it goes. I was very young, probably around 5 or 6 years old. I was an only child, but I slept in a bunk bed, not really sure why. Maybe my parents got it for free or something. I usually slept on the top bunk. There was a closet on the opposite wall of my bed. I had very bad feelings about this closet pretty much forever. I don't remember ever not being afraid of the closet. Well, one night I saw a pale blue / whitish transparent skeleton open the sliding closet door, and it just stared at me through empty eye sockets. I stared back. I was too terrified to move. I eventually put my head under the covers and eventually fell asleep. I realized that it was probably my imagination or a dream, but I have other experiences with this closet. This one freaks me out a lot. I remember waking up inside my closet on more than one occasion. I have no idea how I got there. I slept on the top bunk of a bunk bed, so I don't think I sleepwalked to it. The last incident that I remember was not on the physical plane. It was in a dream. I had a dream where I stood before a council of entities. They were very tall and thin and wore hoods. I could not make out any facial features. From what I understand, I was indoctrinated by these beings. It was telepathic. They didn't actually speak. I have no idea if they were good or evil, but I never had another incident with the closet after that dream. I woke up from this dream feeling relieved, so I'm thinking they were good, or maybe neutral. They never tried to harm me, but they sure scared the shit out of me. And thinking about it still gives me the chills.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.